Today it is my real personal pleasure to welcome to Shepherd's Grove and to the Hour of Power my friend and colleague Russ Jacobson. Russ is a member of the Shepherd's Grove pastoral team, I might add as a volunteer, where his focus has been on Christian education and in the creation of small groups. Russ received his BA from UCLA, his MBA from the University of Montana, and his M.Div from Fuller Theological Seminary. He has served both as an assistant and executive pastor in other congregations. His passion as a pastor is to be God's ambassador to people of God. He will soon celebrate his ordination as a minister in the Reformed Church in America, which is exciting. Russ, his wife, Russ, his wife Deanna, and their 3 children live in Orange County. Please welcome with me Russ Jacobson. First of all, hi, Russ.
Hi.
Good to see you, sir.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Russ and I were praying with each other at Rancho Capistrano only 2 days ago, praying for you, for this church, and thinking about the future. Russ, tell us a little bit about your journey, your spiritual journey for you and Deanna, and kind of how you ended up at the Crystal Cathedral in the late 1990s.
Yeah, well, sort of the 1-minute version of that is my wife and I were living the secular lifestyle, and things were going great. And it's not that we were atheist or against God. We just didn't really think about him that much. So we were married, and we decided we wanted to have a family, and we went to start our family. And like everything else, we just wrote our plan down, and we set our plan, and that's the way it was going to be. So we planned our European vacation. I think conception was supposed to be in Paris. And we had it worked out. It didn't work out that way. And the days turned to weeks, and the weeks turned to months. And before we knew it, it was about a year of going through the process of trying to start a family, and the infertility create a spiritual crisis in us. And we felt really poured out and sad and lonely, and there was a hole in our hearts, and we longed to know about God. And right about that time, we started watching The Hour of Power. And we were sitting there, and we loved it, and we just loved everything about it. And one day, I remember we were sort of looking at each other and going, why are we watching this on TV? We could go there. We live like 20 minutes away, so we did. And really felt incredibly blessed and loved and happy to be there, and really felt mentored and loved by that man right there, Jim Cock. Jim really walked us through some really tough times, and I asked him lots of hard questions, and he answered all of them, and I would not want to have someone ask me the questions I asked him. So just wonderful to be here, and you know, Jim and Linda, I just love you guys, and yeah, thank you.
So, Russ, you know, you've found your way to the Crystal Cathedral. You sort of found your faith at the cathedral, you and Deanna both, and you found a mentor in Jim Cock. And you told me once that as you guys would attend on Sunday mornings, you would leave a space between you and Deanna, one empty seat. Yeah. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the story behind that is there's a statue on the side of the cathedral, and it's Job 13:15. And it's inscribed with the saying, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. And at that point, we were so down and so sad and so poured out, we just didn't have the words anymore. We just didn't have the strength to muster, to pray anything. So we really did feel like we had been slain. And at that point, like Job, we had really 2 choices. We could either curse God and just walk away, and we didn't want to do that, or we could just continuing on, and it was a rough time. But sort of our defiant statement of faith was that we left that one seat between us open in worship, and we just did that because we had confidence in God and how he would be working in our lives and through our lives, even though we couldn't see it exactly then.
So the empty seat was a symbol that someday this will be filled with a child.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, that's great, great. My message today is about adoption in the Spirit and what that means for us as believers. As a father yourself, what have you learned about God sort of through your own children?
Yeah. Well, Scripture is alive and breathing on its own, so you don't need to to have children, to experience it and to engage in it. But for me personally, two things come to mind really about being a father. And the first thing is, as a dad, you don't expect your kids to bring you stuff, you know? You're not looking at your kids to bring you presents and gifts and stuff. You just want to be with them, and you want to be involved in their lives, and you want their hearts, and you want their love. And I think that's sort of how it is with us and God. That God just wants that relationship with us, and he wants us to be invested in him, and he wants us to really love him and pray with him and that sort of stuff. And the second thing is some of the scripture stories and the gospel accounts become really poignant when you understand them with that sort of love in mind. And I'm thinking specifically of Jairus. And Jairus has a 12-year-old girl, and she's gravely ill. And he knows the only thing that could save her is Jesus. And he goes and he searches out Jesus, and he falls at Jesus' feet, and he begs him. He begs. In fact, in Matthew's version, she's already dead. And he just keeps at it. He keeps begging Jesus, and he keeps going. And I can understand what was in his heart, and I think you as a dad can also, you would go to the end of the earth, you know, for your kids.
And so that's how you see God sort of viewing us that way.
Yeah.
Wonderful. You and I have been working, you've been spearheading a book called Many Mansions, which is a collaboration of a lot of the leaders in this church to create a book for the season of Advent. That's the 25 days before Christmas. And tell us a little bit about that, because it's going to be offered on the Hour of Power, and it'll be available to this church. And it has some purpose to it beyond just making an interesting book.
Sure. Well, Advent is historically a period of preparation. It's preparing our hearts. Just like we don't rush to the resurrection in Easter, we have this period of Lent where we prepare our hearts and we align our lives with the will of God. And so in Advent, we don't rush to Christmas. We sort of go through this period of preparing our hearts and sort of rehabilitating our hearts and lives. And one of the ways you do that is there are typically Lenten studies and there are Advent studies. And a lot of these studies are written by one person, so you get that one person's viewpoint on a lot of stuff. You get a lot of the same language and the same ideas, and that's one approach. Or you get a bunch of different unrelated people sort of coming together and giving their contributions. The thing about the book that we're working on, Many Mansions, is it's the leaders and the pastors of Shepherd's Grove and the Hour of Power. People we all know and love, and some stories we'll even recognize in there. And I think that's what makes it really powerful.
Yeah. And my hope is that out of that we have people studying it together, and it really becomes a way that as a church we can together engage in that Advent season more as a congregation. And then the viewers on Hour of Power can also be a part of that. So I think it's an exciting tool that'll be available to us. Well, thank you, Russ, for being here. We're so glad to get to know you better. And by the way, you never finished your story about sort of what happened with you and Deanna.
That's right. So basically, the way it happened is that we tried all sorts of advanced medical procedures, and just nothing worked. Just nothing worked. And at some point along the line, we just sort of gave up and threw our hands up and turned it over to God, which one could probably say is what we should have done from the very beginning. And God blessed us with our son, Teo. And then we had 2 more children follow. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to invite them up here so everybody can meet them.
Come on up, guys. Yeah.
Come on up. And Jim and Linda, if you want to come on up as well.
So great. So this is a symbol, you know, and this kind of thing doesn't happen all the time. And sometimes God does call couples to adopt or to go without children. But in this case, really, you see how God used this really difficult circumstance to draw you to him, to create a beautiful family, to get these two involved in your life, and we're so glad, Russ, to hear your testimony. So glad to have you as a part of our team. Let's give them another hand and thank them for coming. Thank you, Russ.